The internet has declared 2026 to be the year of whimsy, and I am so down for that. One of my goals for the year is to do one little whimsical thing every day. Whether it's wearing a funky necklace, going for a walk in the woods, or having a cocoa with lots of whipped cream while curling up with a fantasy show. And one of my means of adding more whimsy into my life is increasing my reading amount. And like a lot of folks, I do a lot of reading in bed. But therein lies a conundrum, because you can only pull up the blanket so far before you can't use your hands to hold the book. I mean, you can go full under the covers method, but then there's the whole breathing issue, and that's a whole other kettle of fish. And yes, there are robes and housecoats, but I find they tend to scrunch up and feel kind of bulky and not as comfy as you'd think they'd be, at least for this one particular application. But I still want something to keep my arms comfy when I'm curled up with a good book. So I turned to days gone by and decided to make a vintage style bed jacket. Bed jackets have been around in various styles since the 17th century, and in the early days were often quilted with warm flannels, wools, or silks if you were wealthy, or could even be knit. In the 1930s, they were popularized in Hollywood movies and became more of an aesthetic capelet rather than an actual jacket and layer of warmth. And when I stumbled across this clipping describing a step-by-step tutorial on how to make one, I had my plan. And this is a great project for a bit of stash busting, as it only needs a smidgen more than a yard of fabric. I had just enough fabric left over from the lining of my Jedi tunic, and it's a great weight and texture for a project like this. You start by folding the fabric in half, and then half again to mark the center point. Then, as the instructions say, I marked 1 inch to the left of center and 3 inches above the center marking. I used my French curve to give a nice, smooth curve in the neckline, and then marked from the 3-inch mark to the base of the fabric, angling in to meet the fold. Then I pinned my ruler down and marked a semicircle all the way around. I cut out my semicircle and then the neckline triangle. To continue the vintage vibes, I decided to break out the antique machine, which is always such a joy to sew with. The hem is the trickiest part of this whole thing, as it's a curve the whole way around. Once you hem all the way around the hem and neckline, you could technically add a tie and be done. But where's the whimsy in that? I have some vintage laces that have been waiting for the perfect project, and that project is now. I added the first lace around the neckline and decided to stitch it down by hand. This is done with little whip stitches in a fine silk thread. And then I decided to add on some little ribbon roses for extra whimsy, and not at all because my lace ended up being a smidgen too short on one side. For the hem, I used some lovely straight lace and machine stitched it in place. It wanted to flip up a little when it was done, so I added an extra line of stitches from the underside to keep things sitting nicely. And for a tie, I added some lovely contrasting vintage ribbon that was in my stash. Again, another little piece that was just waiting for the perfect project. And with that, my super duper easy vintage bed jacket is ready for a cozy reading marathon. This was such a fun, easy, and dare I say, whimsical project. I've linked the article in the description below if anyone wants to make it for themselves. It can easily be made up in a day, and there are so many potential variations you could do with this. Now, it doesn't have sleeves, but it is actually quite nice for reading in bed, and has just enough length that my arms still feel pretty tucked in. So go forth and live your best whimsical life, my friend. If you do make one, I'd love to see it. You can tag me on Instagram or share it in my YouTube community page, which, yes, I have turned on, so people can share their own creations and memes and fun stuff. And I will see you all soon for more geekery meets history sewing adventures. Curling up with a fantasy show. Oh yeah, we're on a roll today. No. Ah. So go forth and do in the woods, or having whether it's wearing a funky, I'm just going to start again.